Hello everyone, Melody here, mama of 4 in our blended family of 6. Welcome to Homeschool Happy Hour. Today we're going to talk about what is secular homeschooling. Before we go any farther, if you are new here, my name is Melody and I am in my 10th year of homeschooling with 2 out of 4 of our kiddos. I am a loud, proud, agnostic, secular homeschooler. Our family is a secular family, and I am excited to provide you with secular curriculum and resources, discussion, and encouragement on this channel. So if you're interested in those things, please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and follow along as we journey through this homeschool craziness. Today's video is brought to you based on a conversation that I had with a group of amazing secular homeschooling moms. And I just wanted to really get your guys' feedback here. So as I'm going along, as I get stuck on my soapbox and start babbling away, please drop a comment and let me know what you think. Have I flipped my lid? Have I gone crazy? Am I on the right track? Where am I in this, and where are you, and what do we think about this? Because I feel like this discussion, if you will, I guess it's one-sided because I'm just talking to the camera, but let's make it more than one-sided discussion. Let's talk about it, about what is a secular homeschool. It has a lot of different opinions. There are a lot of different views on what that means. Now, of course, I hadn't really thought about it. Like, I had in my head, what is a secular homeschooler? And my conclusion made sense to me, so I hadn't really thought outside that box because it hadn't been brought up. But once it did get brought up, I was like, like there's a lot of different perspectives on what this means. And so let's talk about that. So I'm gonna talk about what I think of when I think secular homeschooler and why I think that. Now, that does not mean that that is the holy grail, if you don't mind the religious comparison of what it means to be a secular homeschooler. I'm just telling you, like, this is what I think of when I think of that. And I'm also going to talk about why I think that, and I'm going to talk about some of the challenges that I think that secular homeschoolers have as compared to their religious counterparts. So, part one. Just one. What do I think a secular homeschooler is? Well, to me, if you are homeschooling your children, then it's not just about the time you're sitting at a table, the time you're sitting at a desk, doing a curriculum, doing a worksheet. Their school, or more broadly, their education, if you will, is about life. It's about the things that we learn as we go through our day. Sometimes that is sitting at a desk, and sometimes that is going out and experiencing the world, and sometimes that is a discussion that we're having at dinner, and sometimes that is an experience we have with other people when we do a group activity. Like, it can mean so many different things. Like, our life is our education. Does that make sense? And so because I view homeschooling in that way, to me, a secular homeschooler is somebody that is a secular home, that you have a secular home. Now, as I've mentioned in previous videos, if you've not seen them before, I am an agnostic mom. My husband is an agnostic father. If you want to get really specific, we would be considered agnostic atheists. If you're not sure what that means, it just means a person who's agnostic means that I don't know whether there is a God or not a God, and I don't think you know either. And I think then anybody who says they do know is, I guess, it's a matter of their faith. It's just what they believe. It's not a fact. Like, it's not something they can prove or disprove. And absolutely, they're welcome to that faith or that opinion, but to know something is different in my view on this. So that's why I choose to be agnostic, because I don't believe anybody actually knows. Now, an atheist would be somebody that believes there is no God, versus a theist, somebody who believes there is a God, or there are gods, depending on your religion of choice, if you will. So if you are an agnostic atheist, that would mean that I don't really know if there is or not, but if I had to choose, if I was leaning one way or the other, I would lean towards I really don't think there is. But I'm not going to hang my hat on anything, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter to me. I don't think it's that big a deal. I just don't know, and I'm okay with that. So some people aren't okay with that, and they try and find answers, and I just don't feel like those answers are attainable beyond what we tell ourselves. Wow. I am sure that in that, I have already made somebody mad. But that's what I do. So I don't do it on purpose. That's just my thought on that. Now, I have some of my very best friends are people of faith. They have very strong belief systems, and I think that's amazing for them, and that works for them. And I have no opinion on their choice to live a faithful life, if you will. That's their life. They should do whatever they want. To me, being secular is being without religious influence, okay? So if homeschool is everything that we do, and being secular means without religious influence, which, oh, side note, I'm going to be all over the place on this one, guys, which does not mean without religious education. Religious influence and religious education are not the same thing. We'll touch on that. Let me circle back around to that. But to be secular means without religious influence. To homeschool is everything we do. So how can you be a secular homeschooler if you live within a belief system? I can't figure that one out. So to me, when I see people that say they're secular homeschoolers, particularly on YouTube, and keep in mind, the group of people that I have been working with more or less as like a secular homeschooling group, I've come to discover most of them are religious, and they still consider themselves secular homeschoolers. And I'm not saying they shouldn't. They can consider themselves that. I mean, I could be totally off on out in left field here and just not thinking about this straight. But it confuses me, because if you're providing your child with a religious influence, then you're providing them with their education is influenced by your religion, and therefore you're not a secular homeschooler anymore. You're a religious homeschooler. Is anybody following me? Please, if you're following me, give me a shout. Tell me I'm not just on this island alone. If they want to say they're secular homeschoolers, that's fine. My understanding based on their explanation to me has been that because they feel like they're using secular materials in their formal homeschool time, that makes them secular homeschoolers. And I absolutely appreciate that they're sharing those secular materials specifically on YouTube or in any other way, because sometimes it can be hard to filter out the religious materials versus secular materials. And so if they want to share secular materials and say, hey, we're secular homeschoolers because we're sharing secular materials, then I mean, I don't have a problem with it. Just, it's different. It's just not the same thing. To me, if the other argument that I hear them say is, well, because my political views don't necessarily align with the stereotypical religious political viewpoint, or usually when we say religious in our country, we're talking about Christian. That's the most, I don't know if it's the most common, but it's the loudest in the United States. And so they'll say, well, I tend to lean more liberal versus conservative, and conservatism tends to be a more Christian viewpoint. And while, I mean, there are stereotypes for a reason, let's be honest, people. Usually there's a stereotype because that's commonly a thing, but we call them stereotypes because they're not always true, and we shouldn't make those assumptions about individuals. Now, to me, secular has nothing to do with liberal. They're different. And I do have a video talking about how in our home we are secular and we are conservative. So if I knew somebody that is Christian, or I do know people that are Christian and they're liberal, you would call that a progressive Christian, not a secular person. Does that make sense? Okay, hopefully I'm making sense here. So anywho, that's just my view on what it means to be a secular homeschooler, why it confuses me when some people say they are, but I wouldn't think that they are. But I still appreciate them sharing secular materials, absolutely. And of course, there's a difference between your religious viewpoints, whether that's secular or Christian or whatever denomination you are, whatever faith you hold, and your political viewpoints. They don't have to be connected. They can be separate. So that brings us to some of the challenges that we may have as my version of secular homeschoolers. So from here on out, when I say secular homeschooler, I am talking about people who are secular homes, people that don't have a faith-based home, okay? Now, my definition, just for the remainder of this video, if that offends anybody, not my goal here. Everyone just take a breath. It'll be all right. We can look at it differently, and that is okay too. But for simplicity, just so you know what I'm talking about as I move forward here. Number one, the assumptions of association that people make. So if I say I'm a homeschooler, usually the first assumption of association is that people assume that I'm religious, because historically homeschooling was more pervasive in religious communities than in secular communities. So if I say I'm a homeschooler, they'll be like, oh, well, if they're being rude, they might make some crazy assumptions about me being just over the top religious nutcase, which I'm not saying people who are religious are nutcases. Not what I said. I'm just saying people who are rude would assume that that's the only type of people that homeschool. I think as homeschooling becomes more popular, more common, more in the open, people are starting to realize that's totally not accurate. So then the other assumption of association they might make is if I say I'm a secular homeschooler, then they will assume that I'm politically leaning very liberal. And so on this other spectrum of things. And so unfortunately, people will make assumptions. I mean, we all know what they say about assumptions. You just can't stress about them too much. Really, at the end of the day, it's annoying, but it's really their problem, not yours. So you got to kind of let that go. And hopefully you're not getting that kind of stuff from people that know you well or family members that are close to you. You might, and if you do, hopefully you can shut it down pretty quick and then move on peacefully with whoever it is that you're dealing with. The second challenge as a secular homeschooler can be curriculum. Now, they have curriculum that is secular. Obviously, that's what I share on this channel. There's a ton of curriculum out there. There's more every day. Ow, I bit my cheek. There's more every day. And now I'm gonna bite my cheek throughout the rest of this video and I'm gonna sound like a goof. That's what I get for talking too fast. So there's more every day and it's fantastic. There's also a lot of religious curriculum out there and that's also fantastic because people are looking for that. As a person who's a secular homeschooler, we want secular materials. I want materials that are free of religious influence. Now, that doesn't mean I don't want to provide my children with education regarding religion. I personally believe that all education should involve a basic understanding at the very least of religions and cultures in our world. That is not limited to Christianity. That is not limited to the culture within our country. The world is becoming a smaller and smaller place every day as technology just gets bigger and bigger and we can connect with people from across the world like that. I think that in order to be productive and just good citizens, we need to be able to understand and respect other people in the world. And the best way to do that is to educate ourselves about them. And religion is it's a huge factor in people's lives. It's a huge influence for them. And if we can't understand that, then we're not able to participate in society with as much positivity, productivity as we could. And so I absolutely believe in educating about religions, not just one, religions and cultures. But I don't want my curriculum to have a religious influence within it. Now, when you get families that are families of faith that are saying that they're secular homeschoolers, sometimes those lines about what is a religious influence in a curriculum versus what is not religious influence in a curriculum can get a little bit blurry. It can be a lot easier for a person of faith to maybe lean into a curriculum that has blurry lines about the religious influence it has, or even just to go straight over and just choose a religious curriculum for their family because they like that one in particular. They may not, but because they have that religious influence and education within their home inherently there, it's not as likely to bother them as it would somebody who's an agnostic atheist, where I don't want that, what I would see as manipulation or an undermining of what we're learning with that material. I really hope this is making sense. So while some people they might be progressive Christians, and so they might choose secular homeschooling because they want more progressive materials. Again, secular does not mean liberal. So, I mean, they might get more liberal materials that are still have a Christian lean to them or a religious lean to them. Absolutely anyone can use any curriculum they want, but it's a lot easier, in my opinion, for a person of faith to use a secular material because it is free of faith influence, and therefore it's kind of usable by anyone or everyone, than it is for somebody who is, we'll say, free of faith to use a curriculum that has that influence in it, because it has things we don't want. It has too much more. Anyway, moving on. So the next challenge that I found you may have as a secular homeschooler is finding community. Now, people will talk about, well, we just do these playgroups, we do that. If you are a family of faith and you say you're a secular homeschooler, but you attend church on Sunday and you are involved with your church community, then you have a built-in community already. If I am a secular homeschooler and I don't attend church because I don't want that influence on my home, then it's going to be more challenging for me to find a community than it is for you. Now, that's fine, that's my choice, but it's also true. It's a reality. So as a secular homeschooler who lives in a town that is very religious, I mean, when you drive into our town, the first thing you see on the mountainside is the big, huge white cross. And there's churches everywhere for this tiny little town. There's a ton of churches, and my kids are regularly being invited to church activities. That is the number one way that people connect around here. Not almost. Every single homeschool group that I am aware of in our community, keep in mind, I've been homeschooling for 10 years and have been actively seeking homeschool groups throughout that time, on and off. Every single one is religious. Every single one. There's not a group that I can join. There's not a co-op that I can join that is available to us that does not have an aspect of faith within it. Now, does that mean I can't join those groups? No, it does not. We could choose to participate in those. And this does bring me to challenge number 4, which is balancing the religious communities with our personal belief system. Because it's such a small town and because we're rural, which does give us more limitation in what groups we can join, then we have to choose. Do we not participate in any group activities, or do we just accept activities that are faith-based? Now, if we're accepting activities that are faith-based, then we have a bit of a challenge. If you're easily offended, I apologize in advance. This could get interesting. My kids have often been invited to like youth group. I have friends, very good friends of mine. They regularly ask my kid to join their child, because they're really good friends, to go to youth group. I do allow my children, if they want to go, because I see the benefit in the social aspect of this, but it makes me very nervous. One of my kiddos doesn't want to go. She's pretty steadfast and she doesn't want to do things associated with the church. She just isn't interested. I think it's because she's received some unwanted pressure from that, and so she doesn't feel comfortable going there and just being herself. She feels like it's just too much pressure. One of my other kiddos, she's happy to go to Wednesday night youth group whenever she's invited. It's fun, there's snacks, they play games. She's good with it. This makes me nervous though, because religions, churches, have over the history of time mastered the art of bringing people in. It's literally what they do. Their whole purpose is to bring more people in to their faith. And they're never, ever, ever, ever going to come to you and be like, here are the issues with our belief system. Please come join us. No, they're not going to do that. They're going to show you this beautiful picture of what it is to be a person of faith and what it is to believe in God. And they are going to use every single resource at their disposal to encourage, guide, and I would even say, whether it's conscious or not, manipulate people, specifically children, into being involved with their belief system. Now, I'm one person, and while I know that I have a very strong pull with my children, I do not for a second underestimate the pull of the organizations that have spent decades or even hundreds of years fine-tuning the art of converting people into their belief system. So it makes me uncomfortable. And I really have to balance between, okay, I've provided my children what I believe to be a full and honest education. And at a certain point, they need to just go out there and they need to make their own choices. They need to decide for themselves. I can't hide from the church. I can't hide from the church's influence or their efforts to recruit. That's a reality that we live in. That's part of life. So my kids need to be able to go out there and use critical thinking and decide for themselves if that's something they want to be a part of or not. At the same time, it's like, how much do I let that in when they're younger versus how much do I wait? It's so different with each child. I know with our older kids, we didn't really proactively talk about the church. They went to public school. So then my oldest went to college, made some friends with some church friends, said, hey, I'm starting to do a little research into this church. And next thing you know, she's getting baptized and she's changed her belief system. She's changed everything about herself, changes the way she dresses, she changes the way she behaves, she changes the rules she lives by. She's joined a more extreme group. I'm not super excited about that, but she's an adult. She has to do what she wants to do. But I can't help but question, were these decisions that she made partially influenced by our failure to educate her and prepare her for that and being able to use some critical thinking and look at that. So we're working really hard to make sure that's not an issue with our younger kids. But that is the fourth challenge, is really balancing our desire to be involved with community things, which is really limited to religious activities, and our desire to maintain our secular home, our secular lifestyle, and I guess you could say our secular belief system, although that seems a little bit like a oxymoron. Anyway, hopefully I didn't offend too many people. Again, I have very dear friends to me that have their belief system, and I don't mean this as a this is better or that is better, or this is worse or that is worse. Just these are some challenges that we have as secular homeschoolers that are not people of faith, which are not challenges that are going to be experienced by somebody who is a person of faith. Even if they call themselves secular, it's not the same. Anyway, so please, 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 let's make this more of a back and forth. Let's make this more of a discussion rather than this huge monologue. Drop a comment in the box below. I really genuinely want to know what you think. I absolutely understand there are people out there that disagree with what I'm saying. That is fine. Talk to us about it. Let's see, how do you view it differently? What is it that I'm saying that doesn't make sense to you that you say, no, this is wrong, 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 because, tell me, explain it to me. Otherwise, that is all I have for you today, and I will catch you next time.